Hey everybody, SomeGadgetGuy here, and you should know by now that I'm not a huge fan of doing device versus device, showdown, fight for blood, kinds of comparison videos, but I've been getting a bunch of comments and questions from you folks on how the LG G3 stacks up against a bunch of the other phones out there in the Android and Windows phone ecosystem. I've been specifically asked about how the G3 compares to the Lumia 930/Icon. Now, I really don't want to get bogged down in a comparison between Windows Phone and Android. There are all kinds of videos out there you can see to compare all the various software features. But in terms of build and hardware, these two phones approach flagship device from very different perspectives, and I think that's kind of interesting. Now, immediately what you'll notice between these two phones is just how much brighter Nokia has been able to crank the screen on the Icon over the LG G3. While the G3 has a higher resolution screen, I don't think this is one of the better outdoor viewable displays. Nokia just includes a much more aggressive high contrast visibility mode when you're outside in direct sunlight. It's really hard for me to capture that on camera. Again, and I've made this point in other videos, I don't necessarily see the tremendous advantage in having the Quad HD screen when placed next to a 5-inch 1080p display. You kind of know in your brain that this is the better screen, the higher resolution screen, but unless you shove both of these phones side by side and then right up against your nose, it's really hard to see a clear advantage with all of the extra pixels on the G3. Walking around the device, I really like the look of where Nokia is going with their phones right now. It's a very angular and modern approach to smartphone design. That said, I think the G3 actually fits in my hand a little bit nicer. I've talked about this on the Icon before. I don't necessarily love the hard metal edges. They kind of dig into the pad of my palm in a way that I don't think feels very nice, especially when you're trying to reach that back button, you're trying to go one-handed. Whereas on the G3, this fits in really nicely. The corners scoop just where you need them to hold on to the device a little bit easier when you're holding it one-handed, especially like when you're in the middle of a phone call. I think it's a noticeable improvement to the phone experience, how you handle your device. That being said, when you use the G3 as a camera, these corners taper to such a slim edge that I'm always nervous that I'm gonna drop this phone when I'm shooting video. A little less so when you're shooting pictures. You can kind of hold this out, you can kind of just fingertip it, but there's not a lot to really grip onto on the corners of this phone. What I find I'm doing a lot of is packing the phone into this ridge of joints here on my hand, which unfortunately can sometimes block the mic port down here at the bottom by the headphone jack. You have to be really careful how you're handling it so that you're not blocking one of the microphones for shooting video. And that actually has proven to be a subtle advantage on the angular design for the Icon. This flat edge is a little bit wider than you think it needs to be, but then when you hold the phone and you start shooting pictures or video and you've got this dedicated camera button, it really is noticeably easier to hold onto this phone to do things like use the camera. These two devices really stand as great examples on that back and forth debate we have between capabilities, features, and design, fit, finish, and aesthetics. The Icon to me just feels like a more solid device. It's got a lot more design polish going into how all the corners fit together in this metallic band which runs along the sides of the phone, and this polycarb plastic that Nokia has become really famous for. It's a really, really nice, striking, and unique experience. But of course that means we can't get to the battery, and we also don't have a micro SD card slot to expand the storage. Which means we've got capabilities on the G3 here that the Lumia 930/Icon just can't touch. It already comes with 32 gigabytes of storage, so it matches the Icon there. And then if you want to pop in another memory card, it's stupid simple to pop off the back cover, throw in the memory card, and double your storage very, very cost effectively. And they also trade blows on a number of other features as well. So I think the camera and quad microphone array on the Icon are far superior to the 13 megapixel camera here on the G3. This is a larger camera sensor, which means it's capable of a more photographic depth of field, that slight blurring in the background that you see when you focus on your subject. And I really do like the Nokia camera app over any of the Android camera apps, even the refined G3 app. I think Nokia has the best camera experience for those of us who like to go in and control the actual photographic effects on our phones, those photographic capabilities like shutter speed or white balance. I think this is a much nicer experience. But between these two phones, the laser focus on the G3 is phenomenal. And I think that kind of performance, the laser focus on the G3, actually outperforms the Nokia camera app's ability to acquire and lock onto your subject. Plus, the G3 will give you the ability to refocus your video while you're shooting it, whereas you cannot refocus video while you're shooting on Windows Phone. It's one of my biggest gripes about the Nokia camera app is after you start shooting video, if you want to tap on the screen to refocus on something, you can't do it. The speaker on the G3 is louder than the speaker on the Icon, but I think the speaker on the Icon is less prone to distorting and it sounds a little bit nicer than the speaker on the G3. I've got speaker reviews for both of these if you want to go ahead and take a listen to them. And it's in that attention to the detail. Things like the micro USB port just feels nicer on the Icon when you're plugging in a cable than it does on the G3. That plastic edge from this top piece here just seems to subtly get in the way of the pins on the micro USB, at least on my review unit. This hasn't been true for other people that I've asked who are also using the G3. They haven't had the same issue. While LG has been improving the audio experience on their phones, I think the headphone jack on the G3 is another step above the G2 and the G Flex. They still aren't quite able to compete against just the monster audio capabilities that you can find on a Nokia device. And I've mentioned this in previous videos too. These are the two companies that I'm most excited to watch compete in the smartphone arena. I think Nokia has definitely taken some hard hits moving over to Windows Phone. Microsoft is a distant third place competitor to Android and iOS, but these two manufacturers are doing some of the most interesting work, in my opinion, when it comes to pushing smartphone design further. It's no surprise that LG is one of the fastest growing Android handset manufacturers, and Nokia devices are always celebrated for the hardware and the hardware and software tweaks that Nokia is able to provide Microsoft's fledgling OS. And you start trading things on the front faces of the phones as well. The earpiece on Nokia, I think, is louder and it's easier to hear phone calls on than on the G3. But then the G3 has a ridiculously better front-facing camera than the 720p video shooter that Windows Phone supports. And so I don't like to say that there's a clear winner between these two phones because there's just they ask of us very different things and they fulfill slightly different roles in the smartphone marketplace. But I'm really curious to know what you guys think about these two different devices. Are you looking for more of the capabilities, the expansion, the battery, the ability to swap your battery that you'll find on the LG G3? Are you looking for a premier camera experience and maybe something a little unique, something a little more modern, aesthetically designed that isn't as common a device? It's going to stand out a little bit more when you look at the rest of the crowd of smartphones out there. Definitely drop me some comments down below. I'm curious to know what you guys think of these two different phones and what phones you're looking at when you're shopping a new device. What is it that draws you to maybe changing from one manufacturer to another or changing from one operating system to another? Definitely drop me some comments. I think that stuff's really fun to talk about. As always, folks, thanks so much for watching my videos, sharing my videos, subscribing to my channel, leaving me those amazing comments. We get into some amazing discussions. I've always appreciated it. Hit that thumbs up button, and I will catch you all on the next review.